This is Empowered Explant, the podcast helping women ditch their breast implants with confidence. I'm Darnah Mercieca, a board-certified health and wellness coach and explant warrior. And right now I'm here at the BiohackingCongress in Austin, Texas, sitting here with Kashif Khan. He is the founder and CEO of the DNA company, which I'm just so excited about, I was just telling you. They help people find out which health choices are best suited for them based on their genetics. It's very cool. And I'm thinking, after everything that I have heard today, that our DNA could really tell us a thing or two about breast implant illness and also the path to healing after explant surgery. So thank you for being here with me.
It's a pleasure. Kashif. This is awesome what you're doing for everyone. So happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. I likewise, you've built an incredible company with a very powerful mission. I'm so inspired by you. Tell me what originally sparked your personal, we're going to get deep, we're going to get personal. Sure. What originally sparked your personal interest in DNA?
So I don't come from this world and industry. So as an outsider, and I think that's highly beneficial because I see things differently, right? So I was sick. I had multiple issues. I was in the marketing and PR business. I helped startup companies grow. That was what I always loved doing. Guys with an idea, we'd work together, we'd build something out of it. And a few years into that, I got pretty sick. So eczema to the point where I couldn't open my eye, literally. Ooh, wow. It was sealed shut. Psoriasis to the point where if I clasped my hands, my knuckles would bleed. Like it was really dry to that point. So depression, gut issues. The worst part was migraines. Horrible, debilitating migraines. So anyways, all this stuff started happening. Multiple doctors for multiple problems, all telling me what these multiple things are called and which pills I have to take.
And, we can relate to that.
Yeah. And then I asked, why is this happening? I had never been sick before that. So my question to everybody is why? It's no coincidence that all this is happening now. And no, it is a coincidence that all of it's happening now. It just happens to be happening now. So I walked away from that, found functional medicine, found a few practitioners that started to show me that you can understand root cause. I'd never looked at my health prior to that. I then understood that, okay, if it's all this root cause stuff, and if the environment affects me, nutrition affects me, why didn't it affect my partner, my business partner? Why didn't it affect my friends? Why me?
We're in the same environment.
Yes, exactly. And that's when I got to my genetics. And I learned that there was key genes that would detoxify pollutants that I didn't even have. Forget about what version, I'm completely missing. And this is why my business partner would drive me home vomiting out the door with a painful migraine, and he had no problem. Because the one gene that I was missing, he has an extra copy of.
Wow.
Downstairs from our office, there was a manufacturing company putting pollutants into the airways that I was breathing in for 3-4 years straight. He didn't have a problem, I did. So that's when I truly I walked away. I said to my business partner, keep it, it's your company now. I found what I have to work on. I need to help the world. This is what I'm doing.
Wow, that's incredible. And so I love how so often the biggest purposes, the biggest missions, they come from first experiencing something like that yourself, and that's so powerful. But you said you were missing a gene, so I kind of want to go back to that because I'm not super knowledgeable in the world of genetics yet. Now I'm very interested now. But so tell us, what does it mean to be missing a gene? How are you missing a gene?
So the genetic world is driven by big data, and they're looking for these variants called SNPs. Okay. Each gene is thousands of letters long, and sometimes there's a letter that was supposed to be a T, but it's a C, so it's spelled wrong. And that now affects the way the gene operates. That's what most of the genetic industry is looking for, because it's very easy to turn those things on or off and create a pharmaceutical around it, etc.
Okay.
There's also something called an insertion or deletion, meaning that there's a paragraph missing. Not one letter off, but it's just gone.
It's a major typo.
Yeah, major typo, yeah. Or it's repeated, right? There's also something called a copy number variation. Didn't even get the gene. How many copies, copy number variation, or you have an extra copy. It's only possible in certain genes.
Okay.
The crazy thing is, it's possible in some of the most impactful parts of your genome, including detoxification, which is so important as a first line defense. I'm missing big chunks of that. So yes, that copy number variation, most companies don't test for. It's a whole other thing you have to look at, but it's way more impactful than a little spelling mistake, right?
And so through discovering your genetic makeup and your root cause, were you able to solve those health concerns that you had?
Yeah, I'm healthier than I've ever been, right? I don't get sick. I don't even get the common cold anymore.
Amazing.
Right? The only thing that hit me in the last little while was I got COVID, and I was up and working in a few days, right? My mitochondria are resilient now and can fight viral infections. So, but I truly was very ill. Like, not just outwardly, here's these symptoms, but no energy. I felt brain dead. I felt brain fog. I felt like I was aging, and I thought that was what was supposed to happen. Right?
Are you sure you didn't have breast implants? No, really, because I mean, we have a lot in common.
So that's exactly why we discovered what we now know. A breast implant is one example of the environmental insult that triggers this stuff, right? That happens to be your thing.
Yes.
For me, it was chemicals. For somebody else, it could be food. Or it could be all of these things for one person.
Yeah.
So the genetics of how we cope with these insults are different for different people. And that's why some women, no problem, I have the implant. It's not true. There's no such thing as breast implant illness. I'm fine. And the pharmaceutical company will say, look at her, she's fine, right?
Yes.
It's not the implant, it's something else.
Yes.
It's our genetic ability to cope. We're not all wired the same.
Right.
That's the difference.
And I want to talk about that because, okay, so you mentioned chemicals for you, right? And breast implants for me. But going back to breast implants, there are several reasons that the breast implants could be making the woman sick, and it could be chemical toxicity from the implant. So they could have a chemical sensitivity.
Yeah.
Could be silicone toxicity. It could be just foreign body reaction. So all of these potential issues, right? So tell me, what you're saying is essentially your DNA could let you know if breast implants could potentially make you sick.
Yeah, there can be a very clear path determined. So first of all, we can predict if you're going to get an implant, this is what potentially could happen.
Yeah.
Because your body doesn't do a certain job well.
Right. So getting this kind of testing could be really beneficial before even making the decision whether you get breast implants.
To make the decision, or if you have them, to heal and cope. And even post-explant, you're still not healthy. You've removed the insult, but the body's still drowning in trauma and needs to recover. So what are you recovering? What's the problem, right? So even identifying the protocol, like what do I fix? So all those different areas, and we've seen it in action. I was actually sitting in Toronto, waiting for somebody, reading a newspaper, which very rarely happens anymore. Where you open, and literally I was sitting in this lobby, and there's a newspaper, and there's a big article about breast implant. First time I ever heard it. Big article about a lady.
Wait, how long ago was this?
This was, I would say, 2019, probably, right? So, and I was like, what is this breast implant illness? So there's a lady suing somebody for some problem, and she was winning, and now all of a sudden there's news about it. So Health Canada's response was, that implant is no longer allowed, right? That one.
Yes.
Because
they banned a specific
one, right? But every other implant is still allowed. So that's when I thought, again, this sounds like what happened to me. Right? This sounds like somebody saying that you have eczema, you have psoriasis, you have this, you have that. But nobody figured out and told that lady, why did it make her sick?
Exactly.
She didn't know.
No.
Right? She had no clue. So we started to investigate that. And we started to ask plastic surgeons and clinicians, do you have women that are complaining about these problems? And they said, yeah, some people, they didn't believe it was real at that time, right? And then we started to talk to these women, we started to learn, and we got their genomic profiles and healed them, whether explanted or not, by identifying the root cause of what the problem was to begin with. And like you said, there's multiple, and we can talk about so many of them.
Yeah, and that is the thing. I mean, my goodness, figuring out how to heal after explant is also challenging. But so let's come back to the DNA testing itself. So because we're kind of diving in without letting everyone know what kind of testing the DNA company does. So let's talk about that quickly. So
part of that journey that I went through of like healing myself, even when I got to genetics, it still didn't help me because genetic testing itself didn't work. Genetics was really good at ancestry, genealogy,
Yes.
and rare genetic conditions. You have sickle cell syndrome. You kind of know you have that. You may have a gene that equals a very rare cancer. That's 2% of cancers, right? The majority is things that you adopt over time. So that's when I learned that even this amazing science, the tools weren't built properly. So that's where I came in, thinking the way I think outside of the world, and building the tool that I needed. Right? I needed to tell me, how do I slow down my aging? How do I have more energy? How do I sleep better? Right? So that needed to be reinterpreted. There's no single gene that equals any one of these problems. So we had to build a new test. It wasn't about, here's your results, here's a list of genes with a list of outcomes. That doesn't move the needle on anything other than a genetic trait from a gene, right? Chronic disease, breast implant illness, things like this, there's polygenomic or multiple genes that come together to equal a system that is failing. And that's a system that you needed to fight whatever this thing is. It's not a single gene. So we had to build that. So we mapped that. We met with hundreds of women, well, thousands actually, 3,500 women.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, not all for breast implant illness, but for multiple infertility, fibromyalgia, endometriosis.
Thank you for doing a study on women.
It took us 3 years, right? 3 years face to face, understanding their diet, their nutrition, their lifestyle, because all of that needed to be added. I could tell you, here's your genome, but if I don't know how you eat and how you exercise, I can't really be certain about what to tell you, because you might already be doing everything right. And then there's no problem. And when I'm telling you, here's your genetic problem, I don't feel any of that because you're doing exactly what your genome was calling for. Right? So that's when we learned, here's all these sort of avatars or profiles that people fit into. Here's what the potential problems are, and here's the right choices you need to make so you don't have those choices.
Based on your genes thrive with.
Exactly. And so now it's no longer genetics, which is this gene equals this problem. It's functional genomics, just like functional medicine. Functional medicine isn't, let me diagnose your disease and give you a pill. It's, let me find out why you got the disease. What's the root? What were you doing wrong environmentally, mold toxicity, whatever that thing is that got you there? If we deal with the root, the disease will go away. And that's how we think about genetics. If we tell you what system is failing in your body, we know what jobs are not being done well, and we now know what you can cope with and what you can't cope with, and what problems that can equal. Much more actionable, right? And that's what I needed, so that's what we built.
Yeah, and to heal the root cause of anything, it's holistic. It's a big picture approach, which is why I dove into the reports that you offer. And you can see those on the website, which was great. So good to see those. And so I was diving into them. I'm like, wow, you really give a big holistic picture of what's going on, from food, supplements you should be taking, things that are going to work for you. And I love it because as a health coach, I was really trained into a bio-individual approach, meaning there's no one size fits all. Everyone is different. It is bio-individual. With that, though, there's a lot of investigation. And a lot of time spent investigating. So what I love about this so much is you can really cut that time and get to what you need a lot quicker.
That was exactly the intention, what you just said. Right? The intention is, I went through it. I had to go through 3 years of trial and error, finally figuring out what my actual problem was, and then trying to figure out what the solution is for that problem. That was another year of trial and error. Then eventually I started to find things that worked. So 4 years of work to heal myself, right? So now what's the outcome? At the time all of this happened, I was 38 years old, and I started to learn about these different tools. So I tested my biological age, and I was 43. So I was 5 years older than my chronological age. I am now 43, so it's been 5 years. And my biological age is 33.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's 10 years.
You really turned back the clock.
Yeah, literally turned back the clock. So somebody that doesn't know when I was born looks at my insides, looks like a 33-year-old man. Right? And imagine if I had started earlier.
You look great on the outside too, by the way.
That's just that's the lighting. You have good lighting in here. It's so. Just imagine the earlier you start, the more you can turn back that clock. The clock doesn't need to advance the way we think it does, right?
Yeah, you actually said Oh, I loved this. I watched a video on your website where you talked about making the right choices for your health and how so many illnesses are optional. And that really resonated with me, because I'm a big fan of choice, right? And I don't think that getting breast implants is a good choice for anyone. And I'm just going to put that out there straight up. But I do see that, those real negative impacts, it really does depend. It varies woman to woman, and it can show up in different ways. So how can understanding your genetic makeup, let's kind of get into the nitty gritty. So how can understanding your genetic makeup really help you with the symptoms of illness? So say, for example, breast implant illness, we're talking fatigue, brain fog, all those things that you talked about, pain, hair loss. So if we were to understand our genetics, what are the next steps? How do we then go and help these symptoms? And can we still help the symptoms even though the implants are still inside our bodies?
So with the implant still inside your body causing the illness, what you can do is mitigate the outcome, meaning that I feel 8 out of 10 right now. I can potentially bring that down to 3 out of 10.
Right.
But it's never 0 because there's still an insult in your body causing problems.
Yes.
Right?
The root cause.
The root cause, yeah. So now there's different reasons why you get sick from an implant. One is, so the methylation cycle, there's a series of genes that use things like B9, B12, folic acid, folinic acid to fight inflammation. And most of us aren't doing the best there, right? Because keep in mind, when we say doing well, not doing well, in our current context, the current level of pollution, the current garbage food, the current level of stress, we are not wired for our current reality. So given our current reality, most of our methylation, they're not supportive enough for what we're dealing with. Now add a source of inflammation. Why does your body form a capsule around this thing? It's trying to protect, that's what it sees it as a threat.
Yes.
Right? It forms a capsule which becomes parasitic and so it's a source of a lot of problems. But if your methylation is doing well, the inflammation being caused, you may not notice as much. But that's very few people. Most of us aren't doing well, and most of us aren't taking the right B12 sublingually or in our stomach or adenosine or methylcobalamin. Which version am I supposed to take? Your genes will prescribe all of that. Most of us don't know if we're supposed to take folic acid or folinic acid. Do we need B9? Because our methylation cycle is off in that specific area, right? So now you can do all those things right, and that 9 out of 10 becomes, like I said, a 3 or 4.
Right.
But it's still not 0, right? That's one potential problem. Then there's the glutathione pathway. So glutathione is this chemical that's finding toxins, sending them to the liver to metabolize, getting them out of the system. And these are the things that cause inflammation, free radicals, toxins free flowing in the blood. So all of what the outcome is of these implants, you're forming this capsule. Again, there's microorganisms that start developing and living there that aren't supposed to be there. There's parasitic activity. There's we've actually worked with a clinic that happens to be here in Austin, coincidentally, where we've actually sequenced genetically the material that's removed to see how many microbes and what kind of nonsense is living in that stuff. And
that is so cool.
That's a whole other discussion we have to have, but it's, and it's not good. Let's just say that, right? So how well do you detoxify these things? And a lot of us aren't doing well there. This is one of the potential areas where you could have that copy number variation I was talking about, where you don't even have the gene that's helping you eliminate these toxins which are being caused, right?
So then you're just really screwed.
Then you're screwed, yeah. And this is while you're also dealing with every other toxin.
Yes.
Right? So your body, you just added another load. So imagine you got this wagon of pulling toxins that's already pretty full, and now you're adding breast implants in there. And your glutathione pathway isn't the best to begin with. That's going to equal a problem, right? Then there's your antioxidative pathway. So your cells can take a certain load. They are resilient for the most part. Get sick, go to the gym and work out, you recover. Some women, more than you would think, have poor mitochondrial function. We can determine this genetically, meaning the actual mitochondria can't handle as much. So somebody can go to the gym and lift 400 pounds. Somebody can go to the gym and lift 80 pounds. If the breast implant is equivalent to the 400-pound load and you can only lift 80, you're going to get sick, right? right? Some women do have optimal mitochondrial function, just like some women can go to the gym and squat a lot. You're designed differently. So looking at innate mitochondrial function and cellular function tells you how much can your cells handle, what's that load, and most of us aren't there. We can't handle that extra load. Then you look at hormones.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a whole other area.
Yes.
How many women?
Yeah, this is a big one too.
And this is why women particularly are suffering more for a lot of problems because there's a monthly cycle. So men have the exact same cycle. Progesterone converts to testosterone, converts to estrogen, and there's some nuances of different speeds and qualities you can make. But we do it daily. So that toxic insult we make isn't there for long. Women do it monthly. So when a woman is estrogen dominant and then produces a toxic byproduct 4 or 16 hydroxyestrogen, there's one option of 3 that is healthy and clean. The other 2 are toxic. And a lot of women go down these 2 paths. On top of that, you have your hormone disruption. You're eating the wrong foods, exposed to the wrong chemicals, etc., loading and mimicking that estrogen initial bucket, making more of this toxin, right? And your cycle is monthly. So once you've had your peak hormone ovulation, then things start to come down, convert it. So you got like a good week to 10 days of this toxic insult per month.
Are we lucky?
Yeah. Isn't that incredible? But keep in mind, by design, we were not supposed to be around all the other hormone disruptors. Right? This is new.
Right.
So we haven't genetically caught up to that yet. So by design, this shouldn't have been a problem. Some level of toxicity, yes, but you're clearing it over time, right? But in today's reality, again, add an implant to that, a woman who's already teetering on this edge of I have too much inflammation from estrogen toxicity, and I take a birth control pill, so I'm adding more estrogen, and I have pesticides in my lawn, I'm adding more estrogen, and I use plastics and phthalates and all this stuff, more estrogen, right?
I wear makeup every day, all the things,
That's the woman for whom the implant is going to push her over the edge. She was already at the threshold. She was close. She just needed one more catalyst to push her over, right? Then there's the brain itself. I can't tell you how many people we've dealt with where the problem that they're facing is real. The weight that they give it and the effect that on the body is how they perceive it. So there's often, and we always start here, when we're dealing with anybody for any problem, we don't do it until we first talk to them about how they perceive. Because if you are that person that is, for example, serotonin dysregulated, that can't prioritize details and stimulus, so everything matters, then even the way you're feeling, you're reading into it too much, right? It becomes your identity.
I'm so glad you're going here because mental health is a big component of this. And I mean, anxiety, depression, self-image, just that load that is on all of these women, both before surgery and after surgery. I mean, this is a big part of the healing journey.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's certainly, it's where you need to start.
Yes.
Because whatever you're being told, somebody working with you, you have brilliant information on how they can heal. Are they going to burn out because they're highly reward seeking and they're going to overdo it and then they're going to quit? Are they never going to start because they are the opposite of reward seeking and they're kind of satisfied with where they're at and they don't even try, right? Or do they experience trauma at an elevated degree? So they come talk to you and it's painful because they're talking about all the problems and now they don't want to come back to you anymore.
Yeah, because it hurts.
It hurts, right? Just knowing that they have an appointment with you hurts.
It's triggering.
Right? Because it reminds them, I have to talk about my problem. Right? Yeah. So how do you then cope with that? There are ways, right? First of all, just awareness in itself is half of fighting it. So these layers of a woman's perception when she's trying to deal with all this stuff, if you haven't dealt with that first, how do you actually do the work? Right? You have to do the work at the right amount, in the right frequency, as it was prescribed, and you're not going to do that if you don't first understand how you perceive everything that's been told to you.
Yeah, and there's a lot that you could potentially face through surgery, through recovery, through what you're going to see in the mirror afterwards, and there's a shock factor that comes with that. It's a lot. So if you haven't started really building some, I don't know, mental fitness around that to begin with, when you get to that place, it can be like extra hard.
For sure, you can get stuck, you can quit, you can burn out, you can procrastinate, anything can happen, or you can thrive, You know, you can be an ideal state and you can thrive. So that's where you want to be, right?
Okay, so let's go into surgery recovery. So, I want to talk about scar healing, speed of recovery. Some women heal much faster than others. Right. How does that work?
So that goes back to a couple of things we talked about. One is mitochondrial function. So overall recovery, we find over and over and over again that people that don't have good mitochondrial function are going to take longer, right? Their bodies, the cells can't handle that load, right? We weren't designed to be chopped up and sliced around, and so to get back from that, that's a very serious load on the system. And so some women get up and go, no problem, right? So understanding mitochondrial function, there's actually the same surgeon I was talking about here in Austin we work with. There's actually a prep, like pre-op prep. If your mitochondria is off, let's get your mitochondria firing properly. Let's work on that first.
Right. So knowing this information before surgery can help you prep for it so that you do have a better recovery.
Prep for it, and then the post work. What do I do to complement the surgery so that I recover faster and heal faster? Then you look at the scarring in the skin. Some of that is innate genetics. That's not functional, meaning there's no dial you can turn. There's an innate gene. For example, you'll find that we see over and over again African American skin more likely to have dense scarring, right? It's actually a survival mechanism, the ability to heal and create a scar, right? And make that tissue robust as opposed to a minor scar in this damaged area which may get damaged again, right? It's actually a coping mechanism, which is a brilliant thing that the body does, but outwardly it looks like something you don't want, right? So that's genetics. There isn't a lot you can do other than healing the scar with cosmetics, right? The general scarring, skin health is highly regulated by estrogens.
Back to hormones.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is where you'll see this variability, and you'll see the woman who is more curvy, that has beautiful hair, will likely heal better because she has higher estrogen levels. The woman who is more androgenized, more petite, may have more difficulty because it's more testosterone, more androgenized, right? So, and you can tweak those dials. And most of the clinicians that perform surgery have the ability to prescribe hormones and do this type of work. They just don't know it's relevant to this scenario. So yeah, being more estrogenized, there's simple supplements you can take, because that's what provides the skin sort of its health and beauty.
The key is to know what you're dealing with before you take the supplements, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so going into I want to touch on, there's a gene, the MTHFR.
Right.
Okay, I am such a potty mouth. All I think of is a complete profanity when I see that.
Yeah.
That's how I remember
That's called speed reading.
That's how I remember it.
Yeah.
So that gene is it's very much talked about in this space, okay? So apparently women who, you're going to speak to this better, I think you understand, but women who have a variation in that gene are more likely to suffer from breast implant illness symptoms. Have you heard of that? Can you speak to that?
So that goes back to genetics, which is a highly simplified meaning of the version of what it actually means. So we talked about methylation.
Right.
That was the first thing we talked about.
Yes.
MTHFR is the starring character in the methylation cycle, but it's not the only gene.
Okay.
And this is where because remember, pharma and medication is trying to look for a single solution to a problem. MTHFR, when we clinically study people, 70% of them have this, but why did 30% of them not have it? Because there's other parts of that cycle. You're not looking at the whole cascade.
It's a system.
Yeah, it's a system. And if you don't understand the whole system, it's like looking at one link in a chain and telling you how great the chain is when every other link is rusty, right?
Okay.
Or the reverse. So MTHFR, central character. Upstream, there's 3 genes. Downstream, there's 3 genes. If you don't understand everything, you don't know where this anti-inflammatory process is actually failing. And as an example, if your MTHFR is off, what do? Do I need folic acid? Do I need folinic acid? Do I need B9? Do I need B12? What version of B12? That's based on the other genes in the cascade. Because they're the ones that are working with MTHFR to do this job of methylating. What is methylating, just in a nutshell? It's managing the expression of your genes. So you have a version of a gene, which means it operates at 70% or 30%. Then based on your environmental and nutrition cues, the genes will speed up or slow down.
Okay.
And methylation is what turns those dials to make them speed up or slow down. So your body kind of copes with whatever's going on, and it tries to balance off. Most of us, again, aren't doing that well there because the current reality of the input of what we need to turn the dials against is too much. So in that whole cascade, MTHFR is not enough. It is the right direction. It's the right question to ask. What does my methylation look like? That's probably the number one question you should ask genetically.
And that also helps understanding how you're going to approach detox as well?
To some degree, and that's a very good point there, where if you only look at MTHFR and you only look at methylation is let's collect all the garbage and bring it to the door.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
There's another gene called COMT which opens the door and takes it out. So you could have
So
amazing
that one
methylation.
too.
Yeah, so amazing methylation. I brought it, but there's no COMT, so they're just sitting there. Right? Or I could have a really fast COMT that gets rid of everything, so I don't need to necessarily have the best methylation.
Right? Because it's compensating.
It's compensating. So unless you understand the innate biology, how does my body work? And then ask what genes drive each step in that biology, you're not going to get to certainty. You're going to get to, MTHFR variation, 70% chance is going to be a problem. The other 30% can be figured out. We're just have to get away from genetics, which is gene by gene by gene, into what we call functional genomics, which is systems. Right? Like here's how the body actually works.
That makes so much sense. Okay. We need to look at the big picture.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you were touching on hormones. I switched gears, but let's go back to hormones. Because I'm speaking to a lot of women now who are actually, a lot of women with breast implant illness, their hormones are all over the place. Some women can't come out of out of their surgery. Me, for example, yay. I was very fortunate in that within a few months after surgery, almost all of my symptoms cleared up. It was honestly quite miraculous. However, and my hormones rebalanced, I was feeling really good. There are women who take a lot longer to rebalance hormones afterwards. And also, I'm speaking with some women now who are really struggling. They're going into, they came out of breast implant illness, got their explant surgery, and now they're going straight into perimenopause. And they're all over the place. And they're being told certain things. But we can really we get a lot of insight into our hormones through this as well, yeah?
Yeah, so that cascade that I described is mapped genetically. So as opposed to, again, this gene means this about estrogen, you can't understand the body that way. You have to understand what the body does. We make progesterone, then at what degree, at what speed do I then convert that into testosterone? That's the first question you have to ask. Now that I've made the testosterone, do I clear it? Do I get rid of it? Do I turn it into DHT, which is like the potent manly man version, which some women do, which gives you a nice ripped six-pack, but you might have cystic acne and hair loss, right? Or do I convert it into estrogen? Or am I doing a little bit of each one of these things, right? Now, if I have converted it into DHT, how well do I get rid of it? It's possible to have a copy number variation there. You might not have the detox genes to get rid of it. These are women that end up with ovarian cysts and other problems from this testosterone toxicity. If I go down this estrogen route, I then have to ask, what do I turn it into before I have my monthly cycle? The three options of the metabolites, like we said, 1 is clean, 2 are toxic. Now
you were talking about this earlier when you were speaking, and I was like, wow, because I had never heard of, you were talking about risk of breast cancer and all of these things. I'd never heard it explained like that. You blew my mind. I just have to say that.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's so much simpler than it's made out to be, right? So it's been oversimplified in the context of breast cancer. BRCA gene, go get a mastectomy. That's an oversimplification. But the reality and the truth is not that complex. We just said it. How do I make my estrogens? What quality are they? And how well do I detoxify them? 3 questions you need to ask. To make those maps was a lot of work for us, right?
I can imagine.
Yeah, those algorithms and the artificial intelligence and all the research, that was the work.
Yeah.
But now it's easy. It's 3 questions to ask. Now I know, okay, if I am more estrogen dominant and I am more estrogen toxic and my detox pathways aren't that good, and there's 3 different pathways we look at. Well, I am the woman for whom, if I spend time on birth control pills or hormone therapy or the hormone disruptors, I might get breast cancer, that question that we were talking about earlier. Or I might have a crazy menopause, or I might have horrible menstrual cycles with bloating and pain and cramps, etc., right? If I don't have these, am I more balanced in my hormones and I make the 2-hydroxy, the clean stuff, and my detox pathways are amazing, I don't understand why my friend keeps complaining about all these problems.
Yeah.
Right? They don't exist. Fertility, no problem. My hair and skin are beautiful. Everything's good, right?
Oh, she's a lucky one.
Yeah. But that's very few women.
Yeah, it is.
Right? So you're most likely, keep in mind, there's multiple steps here. So the chance of having a problem is fairly wide open, right? Because it's not just one thing we're looking at.
Right.
So in most cases, there's something to work on. Right? There's definitely something to work on. Now, if you know that the cascade can be that black and white and certain, and you're a woman, you need to start there, right? So much of female health is rooted in this one map, right?
Yeah.
Everything that we're complaining about and talking about clinically with women, this is where it all comes from. So if you start here, so many problems can be unwound and broken, including breast implant illness, if this is the reason, if it's the estrogen toxicity, which it is for a lot of women, right?
Wow. Okay. So tell me, how does the testing process work? How with the DNA company?
So it's a saliva sample. It gets shipped to you wherever you are. You spit in a tube. It's 5 milliliters of saliva. We then extract the DNA from the saliva. It gets sent back to the lab, and we sequence it. And that just means testing the extracted DNA for the variations that we believe are important. So most genetic companies are looking for thousands and thousands of little data points. We only look at about 100 genes because we believe there's really 6 major systems that matter. Hormones, cardiovascular health, which also points to diabetes, Alzheimer's, the major chronic diseases all come from like endothelium and like vascular health, right? Diet, nutrition, should I be keto, should I be vegan, how do I break down fats, etc. So everything about your metabolism of food. Sleep, right? I can't fall asleep, can't stay asleep. I sleep through the night when I wake up not feeling rested. Those are genetically 3 very different things. We then look at mood and behavior in the brain, which is probably the biggest section of the report. Everything about the different neurochemicals, serotonin, dopamine, adrenaline, etc., and how that makes you behave and perceive, and how you can actually turn those dials quite easily if you understood what's going on there. And the last one is immunity. So what's happening at the actual cellular level? So detox, methylation we talked about, antioxidation, how healthy are the cells? Because this is where everything starts. Inflammation is the root of everything. So if you know how your body either fights or is susceptible to inflammation, you know what's coming. There's a 7th section. There's these are the 6 core kind of algorithms that drive everything. And from all of this, we also interpret longevity. So how do you learn from all these things? How you add an extra 15 years to your life, right? And healthy years. We're talking about health span, not just lifespan, right?
Yes.
So there's an additional longevity report which gets into reinterpreting this stuff for bone and brain and cognition and things that you need to be old and healthy, right? So our algorithm, after these, 7,000 people we studied, 3,500 men, 3,500 women, we've populated what we see and learn from everybody, so that you can very easily draw from the genetic profile that you fit in. Here's the potential problems, and by the way, here's the supplements you should take, here's the habits you should avoid, here's the habits you should adopt, right? It makes it very easy and actionable. So that's what it all looks like. You log into this portal, kind of looks like Netflix, you're clicking on tiles and drilling through things, and you're learning. And if you want to learn more, we have clinicians that can support.
Yeah, it's a very easy to use interface. I love how you break down the information so it's understandable, and you're really empowering the person with the knowledge that they need. You're not making it so that it's overcomplicated and now you have to take this information to somebody who can actually read it to you, and you are giving the person the information that they need to take steps in the right direction.
Yeah.
So that's really helpful.
And the thing you said about somebody reading it for you, we understand that experience also there's a wow factor there.
Yeah.
So we.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what we did was we built another section to each report called the Genecast, and the Genecast is your personal podcast. So here the reports are all like, depression, anxiety, weight loss, like the things you want to look up and understand. Then the Genecast is our AI pulling on all these audio files and curating for you a personalized consult. So you have this version of this gene, which means this, which means you may behave like this, which means you might enjoy this, you might want to consider this. So it's as if that PhD is sitting there with you and interpreting it for you.
Breaking it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Kind of guiding you through the
guiding
information.
you through the actual genes themselves, which you can then know how to apply to the problem. So if you want to geek out and learn the science, it's also there.
Mm-hmm. And of course, getting all of this information just kind of, it can be overwhelming, and it can feel like, oh, what do I do with this now? How do I implement these changes into my life? We're talking about behavior change on a big level here.
Yep.
But you can also support there as well, right?
We can. So we have functional genomics practitioners that can help you with programs. Like if there's a goal, like my mom had breast cancer, I don't want it. There's a goal. Let's work on that. We'll spend a couple months with you and make sure that we get you that genetic playbook. Here's your roadmap. But really, if you're going to go at it on your own, you start with one thing.
Yes.
Right? Just pick one thing. And that's where the overwhelm comes from. Is like, look at all this information. I'm going to change everything. Don't do that. Right? Pick what's the lowest hanging fruit, the thing that you can very easily do. My report says I can't sleep at night because my circadian rhythm is broken and my body doesn't know what time it is. We can determine that genetically. Okay, one small habit. Turn your phone off 2 hours before bed. Set an alarm on your phone. That's all you're going to do this week. That's it, right? Next week, it's also your laptop. Next week, it's also hubby's laptop and phone so that they're cooperating with you. So slowly adopt those habits. Then you work on another habit and another. If you want things to be permanent, which they need to be in order to achieve that holistic view to health like you're talking about, you can't rush it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Just like me going to the gym, I'm not going to try and deadlift 400 pounds tomorrow. If I want to, it's going to take me a year to get there, right? You got to do the same thing with these habits, or otherwise you're going to burn out and not get anywhere.
Absolutely. And whether you're doing that on your own or working with a health coach or with a practitioner, I mean, it's still the same thing. Even if you are working with someone, they're not going to say, okay, go and do these 10 things all at once, because it's not sustainable. Okay, so my goodness, this is so incredible. It can really change the game. So where do we find more information about the DNA company?
So you go to theDNAcompany.com.
Okay.
Right. I've actually posted my report there, as you can see what they look like.
That's what I went through. It's very cool. So that is actually your report?
That's me. Yeah, that's me.
Wow.
So now you know more about me than than you probably should. But so we wanted to put up a sample report. I have nothing to hide.
They don't sell anyone else's data either. That is very important.
So funny thing is,
just his.
Yeah, just mine. Mine's free. You can go take it. This was actually an interesting thing. The genetic industry, as a business model, is designed around selling data. And the reason is because your DNA doesn't change. So once you've bought a DNA test, you're done. There's no relationship, unlike any other business, right? And so it became a data selling business because all these guys that were heavily invested into needed a way to make more money than just selling the test. So that gave us a huge opportunity. The opportunity was that genetic tests, and anybody that's been through one will already understand what I'm saying, the test is not designed for you. It's designed for the buyer of the data. And you know that because when you get it back, the information is useless, right? It's like, what is this?
What am I going to do with this?
Yeah, what do I do with this? It's like, you might have this rare cancer or you don't have this rare cancer. You might, so that may be useful, but there's nothing you can do about it. That's 2% of healthcare. 90% plus is all of what we've been talking about, with the real problems that we can actually control and manage. So we realize if we become the company that doesn't sell data, that actually mines it for you and gives you what you need from it to build health plans and wellness plans and work with functional medicine practitioners and help them build things, well, then we have to make the choice to not sell data because our test won't collect what the data buyers want. It's going to collect what the consumer wants. So that's the choice we made. And we find we're thriving there.
Thank you for making that choice.
For me, it's this is what everybody wants with their DNA, right? take this thing and tell me everything I need to do, because I'm not a PhD genomicist, so figure it out for me. And if I can help you prevent every potential chronic disease that was coming down the line, that's so much more impactful than telling you you're 5% Irish, which you probably already know, you know. So, and that's the route we took.
Right.
Yeah.
So what can we leave these women with? So, you know, I'm just curious to know your personal take with all the studies that you've done. You've obviously done some research in the breast implant illness space. You're knowledgeable about that. What is your personal advice, your thoughts on breast implants, on breast implant illness, and something that you can leave us with, and maybe some steps to take?
So I think it starts with what you said, which is that it is a problem for everybody. To what degree are you feeling it is based on your genetic ability to fight it, right?
Yeah.
So there's no doubt that it's a problem to put this into your body. Some women do a good job of fighting that. As you age, doesn't matter who you are, that fight is going to get weaker and weaker.
It took me 7 years and then couldn't do it anymore.
The body eventually, this is why most chronic disease doesn't set in until your mid-50s. Prior to that, you're highly resilient. The same toxic threat did not make you sick. Now it does.
Yeah.
Because your body can't, hormones levels drop, mitochondrial function drops. And the fight, you're just chipping away at how much you have in the tank. And eventually your body gives up and you get a disease.
Yeah.
Right? So BII is this multitude of, like, it feels like autoimmunity. It's not a particular disease. It's the body going into complete dysfunction, right? Inflammation, autoimmunity, like everything, because it's so confused. Like, what is this thing? So it's a problem for everybody. To what degree and when is it going to happen is based on your genetic ability to fight.
Yeah.
So get ahead of it. If you're choosing to get an implant, that's your choice. Understand what it's going to do to you and what you may also decide to do as habits so that you don't have that 9 out of 10. If you're getting explanted, understand why you felt the way you felt to begin with, so you can now also heal that stuff. Not just, I remove the explant and I'm good. It doesn't work that way, right? That's why people like you exist that can coach people through with the knowledge and help them, right? So understand that the word you use, holistic, that's what it is. It's not just binary, explant equals this for me, didn't equal it for her. It's bad for everybody. To what degree is based on your genetics, and it's not as simple as take it out and go. You have to heal, right?
Love that. Oh, couldn't have said it better myself. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to add links to the DNA Company's website and all of that in the show notes. And Kashif, I just really want to thank you for the work that you do. You are empowering people to make better choices for themselves. And that is literally what this podcast is all about. Giving them the knowledge that they need to make better choices. So that's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, and we're on a mission.
Yes.
You name it, whatever the big problems out there that everyone's suffering from, our goal is to unravel them, understand why they happen, and help people have a choice about whether to have them or not.
Choice. Yes. Then you just got to make the right choice.
Yeah.
Thank you to the Biohacking Congress for having us here. This is such an incredible event. There are over 30 great speakers on biohacking and wellness, 30 plus health companies with incredible products that can absolutely change the quality of your life. This is a great place to learn from experts in the wellness space, as well as explore products that can just change your world. So I recommend checking out biohackingcongress.com and get your ticket to the next Congress that is in Miami in October 20th to 22nd, 2023. And you can also get a ticket to get the digital recording. So if you can't make it in person, I highly recommend that. Thank you for being here with me, and thank you for listening to Empowered Explant. You can check out more episodes on explantpodcast.com.